The Epitome of Transgression is a sophomore full-length album from West Java, Indonesia-based death metal band Incinerated. We could call them black and death metal because of this record, but this band was basically originally known for kind of a late 80s style of death metal that was likened to stuff like Dejal or Verminous, where a lot of bands would pick up on this Morbid Angel kind of sound. There was a lot of like Necrovore style death metal happening in the early 2010s, and this band kind of seemed to take influence from that, especially from like the Swedish scenes of the time. This band kind of fit into that early on with a somewhat chaotic EP back in 2017 and eventually a full length in 2020, Stellar Abomination. They'd arrived in a familiar place and they were doing it well, but it was kind of cool for how erratic it was. It was not necessarily a war metal feeling, but there was something militant and wild about it that was entertaining, to say the least. But this record does something different, and well, I'll kind of get to that after we listen to a clip. I'll talk about what's particularly different about this in terms of style and some of their approach, but overall I think the musicianship is what you'll want to pay attention to on this clip. So for this second record, it feels like Incinerated have become better musicians, and they've expanded their oeuvre in a couple different ways. This feels like a little bit more of a black and death metal record. The previous one kind of did at times, but that was more like a war metal aggression, kind of a slapping beat to it. And this is something that is more knotted together with ideas taken from both dissonant black and death metal as well as progressive death metal. And I think that's the big thing here, is that these performances are much more accomplished, but without being pretentious. It's progressive death metal without pretense, and I think that's a pretty cool angle for a band like this to up their skill and change their sound into something that is a little bit more their own, which focuses on long form songs. So it's a really immersive beast to take on in terms of longer pieces, but also their playing is better. The bass guitar is particularly good here. The drummer is very skilled, and all of it comes together as something that is more like a cult blackened death metal overall. And at first I felt like, well, this is a little bit typical. It doesn't really stand out right away, but the more that I sunk into these songs, I feel like there's something kind of special they're getting at here. It's not particularly memorable, and you wouldn't expect it to be, but the death metal root of it, the bluntness of death metal and their 80s style is kind of gone here, and that was kind of the only thing that surprised me, was that their sound had changed so much. While the spirit of the band is still similar, they've just broadened the way that they express those ideas. And the more dissonant stuff isn't so interruptive and out of place here. It's more that their skill level is up, and the progressive side of their death metal, it really does stand out here in a lot of the more involved compositions. And so for me, this was a very entertaining record, but I don't know how long it'll stick with me just based on time I spent with it and how often I return to it. Check that out for yourself. See if it's for you. You can kind of go in with a black and death metal expectation and not so much old school death metal, and maybe be surprised by that. So that's a moderately high recommendation for me. Check it out for yourself. It released on July 14th, and go ahead and check out my written review for more of my thoughts.